Well, they are endless. I mean, you can automate the coding process. Over a simple bottle of wine or champagne. Why not wrap it in style? But how the choice of wrapping material is absolutely spot on. Find an elastic and some detail. Voila! One so great. Now, on to wrapping those square gifts. Whether it's box of chocolates, a book, or something else. Detail. Mummy! Mummy! अपने घर में तो तैयार जाऊंगी बताओ बेटा खराब हो जाती है खराब हो जाती है चाय बनाओ, पकौड़े बनाओ। वो समझ वालों को सब तो कहते हैं बड़े चक्के बनते हैं, बड़े चक्के। Uh,
What do you say? What do you say? In Tanjung. Oh, Tanjung. Panachi. The cap.
uh, so I just wanted to check what can someone type the password in the chat box? Hello?
Which password,
Yeah,
ma'am?
hi. Can you hear me, guys? Himanshu?
Yeah, I
Himanshu?
can hear you, ma'am.
Yeah, Himanshu, can you type the password for the login?
Which password, ma'am, actually?
The password for this joining link.
Okay, I will do, ma'am.
Yeah, can you just put it in the chat box?
Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
Today there were other classes as well, right? And they were all you are muted there. You put it and you're unmuted and speak. Good afternoon, Titan. Good afternoon, good afternoon. How are you? Good. Thank you. Good.
Ma'am shared pass as well as all the details.
Okay. Thank you. Let me check.
Yes, something most about otherwise the recording is available, so we can start. अरे मेरे खुशी के लिए यार ये तो मैं अपने आप लोगों को चल रहा है करता ही रहता हूँ ना तो आई नीड टू हैव समथिंग
Guys, what's happening? Has the class started? Hello?
Not it.
Not yet? Thank you.
That's a great dialogue. I need to I need screen access. Share screen. I spoke about China because that's one nation.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, just I'll make you the host, huh? 2 minutes.
Okay. Given that thing, and has been able to identify, train, and prepare.
Please check, sir, if you can share
Sure.
the screen.
Yeah, I'll do that. So good afternoon to everybody. I hope I am audible.
Yeah, sir, you are audible. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Great. Today is my last lecture, and from next lecture onwards, some other faculty will take up the balance syllabus. So what I'll do is I will complete the methodologies which were pending from last time onwards. If you remember, we covered a lot of methodologies for evaluation, which is module 4, steps in training evaluation and models for evaluation. If we just take a very quick look at it, we started with the steps of evaluation. I am referring to the textbook which has been also given to you. Then we went to Kirkpatrick model, where we learned about the 4 levels: level 1 reaction, level 2 learning, level 3 behavior, and level 4 the results that we talked about, and where we discussed that the Kirkpatrick model is the most widely used model across the world, and that is why we had a lot of discussion. The level 1 is about how they felt about the program, which is immediately after the program. Level 2 was about, what did they learn. Level 3 is about implementation, and level 4 is about the results. And we had quite a bit of discussion from Kirkpatrick model. Then we went next to Jack Phillips ROI model, which is one step addition to the Kirkpatrick model, where we said Kirkpatrick focuses majorly on the effectiveness and implementation, and while Jack Phillips has added one more level, which is about the ROI. And the main purpose of doing this, if you remember, was that I gave you an example that there can be an improvement in the efficiency, in the sense that, maybe the sales has improved by 5%, but the cost of the training was, say, 10% of the overall training program, and hence, though it shows an improvement, but in reality, in monetary terms, it is 5% loss. So that is where ROI of Jack Phillips comes into picture. From Jack Phillips, then we went next to the Binkershoff 6-stage model, which is also very similar. And like we discussed, that there are a few minor changes here and there. Then we went to the zero model, which is on page number 43, where it is more related to the outcome, the information that we have. So each model base is almost the same, but there are some variations here and there. Then we went to Kaufman model of learning evaluation, page number 45. And we went to Anderson model, which was a little different, okay, and it had a grid, which, if you remember, which is on page number 47. Then we went to AEIOU. AEIOU stands for accountability, effectiveness, impact, organizational context, and unanticipated outcomes. In unanticipated outcomes, we discussed about things which were not primarily within the objective of the training or within the performance objective of the training, but
can happen, and they may have a positive or a negative impact. Okay, and now let us move to the next one. So we are on page number 51, and we will be covering today 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 models very quickly. It won't take much time, and then let's keep last half an hour, 45 minutes for any question, answers, anything that we want to discuss about. So if you come to page number 51, the next model in evaluation is the success case model. So from this model onwards, okay, there is a marked difference in the method of evaluation from the Kirkpatrick model, because this gets into more specifics. Each of the model has a different view and a different way of doing it, which is where the foundation, I would say, is not necessarily the Kirkpatrick. So in the success case model, it primarily focuses on understanding how a training or coaching program works well or why it is not working. So it is not, all other models are like, collective evaluation. So when you do a collective evaluation, there are 20, let's say 20 participants, you collect the data and then you analyze it. Here in a success case model, what you do is you may have all the 20 participants, but you will look at some major deviations. So there is always a central tendency. So when we talk about the bell-shaped curve, so there is always a central tendency. And then there are a few responses which are on the side. So look at those and try and find out why what has gone wrong or what has gone too good for some of the people, and then maybe you want to use that information to improve or to repeat that methodology. So there are two important questions which are asked in success case method. The first one is, how well does this program work in a best case scenario? Best case scenario is, if you remember, we in the second session, we also discussed about so many other stakeholders who will say that the improvement is not necessarily because of the training, but because of some of the other interventions that we would have done. So marketing department would come up and say that, look here, it was also because of an ad campaign or something like that. So they would also like to take the share of the success. Over here, how well does the program work in a best case scenario? So we look at it that if all the variables, all the stakeholders, everything else around is really supporting the ecosystem, then what would be the results? And when a program doesn't work, what is the reason for it? So in a bell-shaped curve, you look at the both ends, saying that, okay, why in some people it really worked so very well, and because of which we got such a high evaluation, and why in some people it didn't work at all or work very less and we got such a low evaluation. It can be used to answer some of these questions. What is really happening? Okay. What are the results, if any? Is the program helping to produce? Okay. So if you see, the name itself says you look at it as a case study. You don't look at it as, collecting data and using statistical tools to come to a certain final figure, which is average of the complete responses, but it looks into very specific aspects. Okay, what is the value of that result? So is it significant? How significant? So if you remember, we always talk in terms of benchmarking, or we always talk in a training program where specifically some specific skills are to be developed. Then we will say that, okay, let us record one of the events which is done in the best way by an ex-participant or by a current employee, and bring it to the training program, demonstrate to the rest of the participants. And that is how we support the theory that we are, or we support the model that we are teaching to the participant. So with this, what is the value of the result? So if, that it is contributing to the organization or to the bottom line, and then how does it really connect to the overall scenario? How could the initiative be improved? So look at very specific inputs. Even if so, in a statistical method, like we say, we take the central tendency and we say that overall the program was 70% fine or 70% useful. But when we look at individual, this 70% is actually an average of somebody who has said 100 and somebody who has probably said 45 or 50, and then the average has come to 70. So why did one or two participants say 50? And taking, even if there are one or two people, take their input so that overall we create a best case scenario. That means everything in the training, including the delivery, the methodology, the content, etc., and the ecosystem is 100% suitable to the participant. It has 5 steps, okay, for SCM, which is shown in your textbook on page number 52. The first is focus and plan the evaluation. Primarily, it uses the steps of the case study method. So, planning the success case study, how you would like to go about, doing the evaluation or studying or measuring the different parameters, defining what success should look like, and drafting an impact model. Okay, so I'm sure somebody somewhere would have taken up a session on performance objective. Performance objective uh, in a complete training process, is directly related to the impact model. So defining that, how, like it says, defining what success should look like and drafting an impact model. So defining the performance, defining the success, and how does it impact to the overall organization. Writing a survey that identifies best case and worst case scenarios, and then implementing this surveys. Okay, so like again, going back to the bell-shaped curve, what are the, I go back to the same example that we may record or we may video and say that, okay, this is the best way of doing it, or we can also record failures and say this is the worst case, and then including this in the survey that we do with the participants. In a success case method, generally not very widely used, but in my experience, I have seen that the evaluators tend to take only a sample survey, because this whole method is very time consuming. You have to get into too much of details, and generally we all training professionals say we don't have that kind of time. But if we do that, then we will have a skewed view, and we will not have a complete view, we will not have a census view, and hence the reliability of the study at times can become questionable. Documenting success cases and conducting the interviews, meeting them, asking them, okay, and taking the data out of it. So it is it's more of a subjective, it's more of an observation based, it is more of question answers, it is more of getting to the roots. That is what this model is all about. Okay, and then drawing conclusions, writing recommendation, and communicating the finding to the stakeholders. So if you look at the figure which is given over here, step number 1 is focus and plan the evaluation, which is planning the case study. Number 2, create an impact model that defines potential results and benefits. So based on this, when everything is implemented, how it is going to impact, what it is going to impact, and what would be the future scenario, and based on that, what is likely to happen to the organization as a whole. So this is, like I said, this also has a model. Sometimes some people may say this is very theoretical, but that is how it has been designed. Step number 3, design and conduct a survey to gauge overall success versus non-success rates. So again, going back to bell curve, negative results, extreme negative results, extreme positive results. conduct an in-depth interview of selected success and non-success instances. Okay, and then finally formulate the conclusions and recommendations, value, and the return on investment. So this is a very deeper method which is there. The next one, similar to it, is a method which is called systematic evaluation method. Over here, as you see, the name itself indicates that it is a very systematic approach which it requires, and that is why it is called this. So this evaluation method requires systematic data collection, systematic analysis, and reporting of the result to those involved in the complete training process. Let's look at the factors, and then we will correlate the same with the figure or the diagram which is there. So first is data collection. What are the data requirements? Okay, a list of all training events, a list of indicators and instruments used to evaluate them, and a copy of the results. Data sources, which is program records, occasional special studies. So over here, even other methods like the previous one, case study method or something, all those could also be used. And then propose as training organization attempt to develop a culture of evaluation to improve their programs. This indicator documents the evaluation of the trend. Now, when you look at this, okay, you will, I'm sure all of you will realize that this method is not used for any one single training program. This method is used for the training initiative as a whole. Okay, so that is why if you look at it, data requirements, a list of all training events. Okay, so you may say that fine, I would like to use a systematic evaluation method for the last 6 months, and in the last 6 months we have done this 20 different programs. So we require data of all these 20 different programs, a list of indicators and instrument used to evaluate them, and copy of the result. In other words, we require a complete data of all the 20 programs, and then we use this method to evaluate the training initiative as a whole. So it's not related to only one training program. Like I said, in today's session, we are going to look at evaluation tools which are deviating from the premises on which Kirkpatrick model was there, and they have a completely different approach. So the first one was case study. Now this is the looking at all the various training programs held in a certain period of time. So if you look at the figure which is given over there, it says establish training requirements. From there, determine the training needs. Okay, then select, design, review the training material. It's also conduct, administer training, and evaluate. So in training needs analysis, so it is not measuring only like the other evaluation methods. It is not measuring only the impact of this particular training program, but it goes pre the events which are previous to the training program, which is training needs analysis. So recognition of prior learning, recognition of current competence, assessment of the methods which were used. So we are saying that okay, a person in 6 months' time may have undergone some 2 programs, or they may have been a refresher program, or there could also be a part 1 and a part 2 program. Or he may have just attended one program. So whatever, we require all this kind of data, and within that subset which you look over here is the second bullet point is what was the prior learning. Okay, means previous to this training program, was there any other interventions, or was there an impact of it, and did it really make any impact? And then now, what is the kind of competence level that we are looking at? And it also looks at the second bullet point, prioritize, inform, or approve legislative compliances. Then these are related to programs like first aid, safety, fire training, and all, cost benefit analysis, how it is aligned to the business strategy, and what are the quick returns or the quick wins out of it. In short, like I said, this method is to evaluate the complete training initiative, which means it evaluates the training department and all the things that they are doing, people working in the department, the external sources, the external vendors, internal sources, etc. And then what is the impact on the organization. So that's what is the second model. Third is a system thinking approach model. When you look at the picture over there, the chart over there, it itself shows that it is quite complicated, and in reality, it is. And because these are more deep rooted, they have a different kind of an, I won't say deviant approach, but a different kind of an approach. Not many of these are really used. But yes, when you are doing some research on training, when you want to write certain articles on training, when you probably creating literature for some journals and things like that, these are the approaches which will be very useful versus a simple Kirkpatrick or Jack Phillip or those kind of an approaches, because that has been used by many. And hence you will see that when you read, so many of you might be members of higher study, or you must be getting a higher study journal which comes quarterly. So there are many research papers which are published over it. And those research papers are primarily, many of them I've seen, would be based on models like this, but then it talks in terms of the overall impact of training or certain dimension of training, and would look at quite a few programs, and then the research paper has been published. So that is where these kind of approaches are used. Now, what is systematic technical approach? The component part of a system will act definitely when isolated from the system's environment or other parts of the system. System thinking is an approach to integrate this that is based on this belief. So, what is the belief? Let us read it again. The component parts of a system will act definitely when isolated from the system's environment or parts of the system. So, if you remember in your paper on organization behavior, okay, there was a reference to Hawthorne studies. Now, Hawthorne studies is where we say that okay, the modern HR or practices or personnel has all emerged, which was primarily an experiment under the subject of industrial psychology. Industrial psychology is the mother subject of HR, and then like that. Okay. So over there in that experiment, there were a group of workers who were isolated, and they were given a certain kind of an environment which was conducive, which was better, which had better lighting, ventilation, better working condition. And the other employees were kept in the older, in the whatever the older scenario, where the lighting, ventilation, etc., all this, the basic hygiene factors were not really in place. And over a period of time, it was observed that these workers who were isolated and they had better working conditions, their productivity was better. Now, today it is a matter of common sense that we all say that with the office environment and AC and lighting and etc., and all of the things are good, then employees are happy, and then if the employees are happy, the productivity will be better. And that's why you will see all modern offices having a whole lot of facilities for the employees. But it all came, okay, it all started about 100 years ago from the Hawthorne experiment. Now, why I'm referring to this is that it is basically a system thinking approach where it says that when you isolate one component, okay, and you measure the impact of that component, okay, on an integrated manner, and you see the result of it. That's what exactly it says. Now, in context of Hawthorne experiment, if we read this definition again, I am sure we will be able to understand it a bit better. The component part of a system will act differently when isolated from the system's environment. So if we take up one portion, okay, and isolate it, then it will act differently, maybe better and all. as compared to the other parts of the system. And that is the reason this workers in the control group, who are I guess about 35 in number or so, they demonstrated better productivity than the rest of them. Of course, there is a debate that yes, when you are closely observed and things like that, or when you get into a special category, you feel motivated and you feel better. So the productivity was not necessarily only because of a better environment, but it was also higher because of the esteem which was there, because people, those 35 people felt that we are a special lot, and we are kept in a different environment and we are being observed and all that. So those can also become the motivating factor. Yeah, the systems environment or other parts of the system. The system thinking is an approach to integration that is based on this belief that when different portions are isolated, studied separately, and then integrated, it will have an impact. The three main principles of the system thinking approach are: the first one, a questioning of the boundaries, the limitations, exploring different perspectives, what could probably be the various alternatives, investigating the relationship between these individual components. So study these individual components separately. So if we go back to Hawthorne experiment and say that, okay, we did this, we gave them this 5 facilities, maybe ventilation and lighting and cleanliness and etc. etc. And then we found that the productivity improved by say 20% or whatever. Now we go to the second level and we say, okay, we go back and we bring the lighting to the previous level, pre-experimenting, and then see how much the productivity has increased. Now, if there isn't a marked increase in the productivity, then we will conclude saying that, okay, lighting doesn't really seem to be having much impact on the productivity. And then you again go to the next variable, and then you change that variable, say maybe air conditioning or ventilation or things like that, and then measure the productivity. And that is how you understand the impact of each of this single component on the final productivity, and conclude as to which component seems to be giving better result, which component doesn't seem to be giving better result, and then in an integrated manner, what seems to be the impact, and if at all, what would be the relationship between these 5 components. And that is what we will see in the diagram which is shown over here. Oh, sorry. Okay, so as you see, you will get confused. Each one of you gets confused as to where this diagram starts. So if you look at the left, quality of the training needs analysis, okay, then quality of the training design that impacts the perceived effectiveness of the evaluation, the organization support, the evaluation expertise. Okay, everything may be fine, but the manner in which the evaluation is done may not be correct, may not be impactful. Okay, perceived effectiveness of the evaluation and strength. So for that, the strength of the tools for the evaluation. So these are all, in short, it looks like a very complicated diagram, but in short, these are the 5 different individual variables which needs to be measured separately and then finally put together to understand the impact based on the integration. So what are those? Quality of the needs analysis, quality of the training design, the expertise in evaluation, the kind of organizational support which was provided to the initiative or post training, like I gave you that example in time management, my favorite example, that you do a program on time management, but then the participants were not given the tools to measure time, which is like a diary and things like that. So then how would there be an improvement? So the organization support, then the perceived effectiveness of the evaluation. Sometimes the perceived effectiveness, not sometimes, so many times, the user department, I don't see much of change, I don't see much of improvement. There may be small thing here and there. So the perceived impact or effectiveness of the of the impact of the program is not much, and hence the perceived evaluation also will be lower, saying that we don't think much has happened. And over there comes that what were the tools used for evaluation? Okay, not just the expertise in the evaluation. There's a difference between evaluation expertise and the strength of the tools. So over there also comes that the kind of tools that were used to evaluate what was the effectiveness of them. So questioning the boundary. A boundary is something which includes, okay, and excludes, includes, so it's like that square in a training system that covers many things. So in a systematic approach. So what are the various things that probably we may need to look at? What is a boundary? So it can be a decision about who receives training and who does not receive training. Who makes the decision about what they learn and who does not. As you can see over here, we are not just analyzing the event, we are also analyzing as to who will receive, who will not receive. So, like in the diagram, the training needs analysis. Because based on the training needs analysis, we are making a bifurcation of who has the gap and who is up to the mark. Okay, so that is how the boundary is. Then who makes the decision about what they learn and who does not, okay, make the decision. So many times, like it happens, okay, that based on some training needs analysis, then the training department or the HR department says, fine, these are the training needs which has emerged and these are the people who will attend these programs. And this is what has come out of the either the evaluation process, the performance appraisal process, or whatever process there is. Okay, but then are they competent enough to finalize the list? Okay, the process we all need, because we are talking about training evaluation, we have to go deeper. We have to understand that the person who is compiling the data, okay, that person's responsibility is to compile the data scientifically based on the various data sources. Okay, now once the list has been compiled, it needs to be revalidated by the user department. So ideally, there was a training needs identification process from whichever method. I am part of the training department or the HR department. I compiled all this various data points, inputs which I got. I created a list of various training needs per person and maybe, even further consolidated lists on program wise and location wise and all. So I did all that stuff. Now my role actually ends over here. Unfortunately, in many of the organizations, this study or this compilation becomes the decision, which as per this model and even as per my common thinking is not really right. The right thing would be that, okay, I have compiled this list. I go back to the participant or the participant senior and say that, okay, based on this process, this is the final thing which has come. Now, would you like to reconsider or would you say, yes, this is fine? So you are validating it. So in this system thinking approach, the second point is saying that what makes the decision, who makes the decision about what they will learn and who does not. So who does not may include the immediate boss. What should one include in training material and what one should leave out. So who is evaluating the training? This is one area which I find 99% of the time ignored. So my client may ask me to do a training program on, say, leadership development or some aspect, situational leadership or anything of that sort. So very broadly speaking, a training format, time-wise and content and all that is probably decided. Okay, but nobody actually in the career of so many years, more than 35 years, nobody has come up and said, okay, please give me a handout in advance. I would like to read the handout and I would like to, ensure that the content included in the handout or in the PPT is as per the training need. Okay, because this reading material or the training material or the PPT is what is going to be used for training delivery and what is going to be used by participant for a future reference. So is it aligned on systems approach, like we say, that measures each of the individual component, the effectiveness of the individual component, and then the integration of all this and the final impact to the organization. These questions are all extremely important and should be determined by a training needs analysis. What are the different perspectives about training? That was the second question which we saw in the previous slide. If we consider improving the level of sales, there are so many things to consider, not just improving sales skill. Do the customer want what we are selling? What the competition has to offer? Local as well as the national economic factors and things like that. Now, this is very similar to the previous model where we said that we may train the participant on better selling, okay, and the participant may learn all that and actually implement it. But if the production capacity cannot support the new increased demand, then instead of the expected outcome, there will be unexpected outcome, and these unexpected outcomes can have a negative impact on the organization, the brand equity, etc. And in the process, may improve the performance of the salespeople, but may spoil the brand image of the organization. So then that value proposition has to be looked into. Okay, so coming back, if we consider improving the level of sales, there are so many things to consider, not just improving the sales skill, but do customers want what we are selling? So many times we jokingly say, this telecaller or this credit card seller or this or that, they are so pushy and they are forcing us to buy and things like that. And that is what it is, that, do customers really want it? And if not, then why train them on it? So look at the complete, not only just the ecosystem in the organization, but also the market and the need, and what are some of the, like over here also, national economic factors and things like that. And then establish the relationships. When we talk about relationship with respect to system thinking, it could mean various kinds of relationships. So like you see in the previous diagram, okay, this diagram is confusing because each aspect, each factor is connected. So it's like a star diagram where all the five points in that star are connected. So when you draw a square, you will see there are 4 dots and only 2 dots are connected by one line. But in a star where there are 5 dots and all the 5 dots are connected by so many different lines, which could be 7, 8 lines. So each one is interconnected. And in this diagram, you actually see why there are these arrows going left, right, plus, minus. Okay, so it shows that each one of them is interconnected, and that's what we are talking about in this point. The relationships. When we talk about relationships with respect to system thinking, it could mean various kinds of relationships which are arising. So in Hawthorne experiment, like I said, okay, let us see if we improve the ventilation and just the light, but not the other 3 factors, then what is the productivity? So the interconnection of these variables are measured. Relationship between individuals and groups of the organization, or between these individuals and groups and entities outside the organization and within the environment. So each and every dimension, and that's why it is called a system thinking approach. The next is action research approach. Action research approach, simple diagram: plan, act, observe, reflect. Action research, the keyword over here again, friends, is research. So it is not that typical evaluation sheet that we are talking about. Action research is a term used to describe a particular approach to evaluation that is consistent with the knowledge into action approach. So there is a knowledge, if you remember in the first session, say that the objective of training is how does one convert the knowledge into skill, and how does one use the skill effectively and with a certain value, with a certain ethic. Again, I'll come back to example saying that I can learn. You may tell me the 10 steps of starting a car and driving a car, put in the key and the first gear and this and that and all that. Okay, I can mug that up. You can take a written examination and I can get 100 out of 100. And then you say, okay, since you got 100 out of 100, take this car key and that is the car. Now, since you know the steps, go ahead and drive. None of us will be. So, what is training? Training is step number 1, have the conceptual inputs, which is the knowledge. Second is, okay, now that I have the knowledge, how do I convert this knowledge into action? Action is where my fingers are. Action, hand. So that is where the development of the skill happens. If I do not have the theoretical knowledge, I may still be able to, learn how to drive the car. But theoretical knowledge helps me to understand the process, the SOP, the interconnectivity. Theoretical knowledge helps me to solve problems when I get into a problem. So a very, very, very simple example would be when there are some, minor electrical things to be done at house. Okay, we may call a local electrician who may not have a license, who may have not undergone any training, through ITI and things like that. But he has acquired this skill or the ability to do it by observing others with practice, having done it hundreds of times and things like that. Okay, so he can change a bulb or change a switch and do a few things here and there. But when you want, probably renovation time and things like that, all the electric lines are being changed and the cabling and the connection to the main source and all. That is the time you require somebody who is licensed, who has that knowledge, who understands all this, because something or the other will definitely go wrong, and because of the theoretical knowledge he will be able to go to the source, root cause analysis, go to the source of it and identify the problem and will be able to solve it. So the purpose of training is A, get the theoretical knowledge, B, convert it into skill, C, use that skill, okay, with values, with ethics, and that's where the heart is, and that's where we were talking about the emotional evaluation also. Okay, so I can learn how to drive the car, but I should drive it sensibly with a lot of understanding that if I do a rash driving, I can do rash driving and I can never meet with an accident. But because of my rash driving, so many people on the road can get scared. Somebody may fall down. Somebody may meet with an accident. And because I'm driving rash and so fast, I may not even observe that somebody, I didn't bang into him, but got so scared and he tripped on the road and he fell down. Okay, I don't have the time to see in the rear mirror. So I'm not using the skill, with the sense of responsibility. Actually, why I'm describing this is for us to really understand and connect with the action research approach. Is a term used to describe a particular approach to evaluation that is consistent with the knowledge into action approach. How the knowledge is converted into action. It at its simple, action research is described as a cycle of plan, act, observe, and reflect. The action research aims at achieving both action, that is the change, and the understanding, the research related to it. So it is not just about collecting the data, but it is getting into research where there is observe and reflect. For action research to be impactful, one tries to work towards effective action through good processes. That's where the value comes in. And appropriate participation in that process. So if I go back to the same electrician, the electrician may have passed his ITI and knows the theoretical part of the electrical installations and wiring and all that. And he does it very well also. But you will see so many times these are the same electricians who come to your house and their wires, their live wires, they don't even have a plug. They have come to our house to, maybe install a plug or a switch or whatever. But they themselves don't have, and they will have two live wires and they'll put it in that socket and start it now, which is so dangerous. And that's where being sensible, being process oriented, realizing the safety, they they know for themselves that yes, it is live, and they have to be particular, and in their whole life they will never get an electrical shock because of that. But they don't realize that in the same house there are people who are not electricians and they don't understand, or there may be children or there may be a kid who may pull a wire or trip, or all kind of things happen, and that's how actually the accidents happen. So that is the accident research approach method. The main features of this action research: it is participatory. The beneficiary, staff at all levels and others are involved with an interest in the way that project activities are organized and delivered. The approach is likely to be appreciative. It focuses on aspects of the activity that are valued in order to build on them and to generate momentum of change. So I would again, why this word action research approach? Because here in the evaluation process, everybody is involved and they are seeing the impact of their actions or of their skills to the larger organization. And that is why point number 2, the approach is likely to be appreciative. It focuses on the aspect of the activity that are valued in order to build on them and to generate momentum of change. So let us all, means it creates an environment, it creates a culture whereby everybody says, okay, let us do it together and let us achieve it. In this inquiry, the scope is not tightly defined in advance, but is open to issues and concerns that emerge and are of most concern to those involved. So it is an open-ended study where we say that fine, this is what they have been trained on, and now let us observe, let us see how this training is impacting. That is why again I would like to come back to this model and say that it is plan, act, observe, that okay, uh, what impact it is creating on the organization. Over here, like we read in the next slide, the areas to be measured are not really predefined. They're very generic in nature, so that you keep on collecting all kinds of information, okay, related, unrelated, etc., and then you analyze and then you reflect it. Okay, this is what the training did to the organization. So here it is like you identify, you say, fine, let us conduct a program on leadership skills for everybody from this level and above, or within this band of levels, and with this kind of years of experience and whatever, you can decide that criteria, and then you conduct the program. So plan, act is conduct the program. Now after the program, you may have the Kirkpatrick model evaluation, but in action research, what you do after the program, you say, let us observe, let us see now what is happening. So you look at various parameters, okay, collect information related to it. That's why it is research, okay, and then get into analysis and then conclude that okay, this program, 100 people were trained, and this is the kind of impact which was there on the organization. So it is in Kirkpatrick and those models, we have certain fixed parameters, pre-decided parameters to measure over here. Here, it is not like that. It is open-ended, and whatever is measurable, observed, found different is the data on it is collected and then collated, and then conclusion of it is made. In this case, so point number 3 was, in this inquiry, the scope is not tightly defined in advance, but is open to issues and concerns that emerge and are of utmost concern to those involved. The emphasis is placed on developing a dialogue about delivery effectiveness, as well as staying closely attuned to what matters in the context of delivery. The next is the appreciative inquiry approach. We are on page number 59. Appreciative inquiry is an approach focuses on strengths and not on weaknesses. It is appreciative. So whatever went good, let us only study that. Quite different as opposed to the approaches of evaluation, which focuses on deficits and problems also. Appreciative inquiry is about the co-evolutionary search of the best in the people, their organization, and the relevant world around them. So it is not just about the individual, it's not just about the organization, but it is also about the society or the environment or the business environment or the national economics, depending on what is the scope of the study. In its broadest focus, it involves systematic discovery of what gives life to a living system when it is most alive, most effective, and most constructively capable in economic, ecological, and human terms. You can understand that it has a very broad scope. It's a 4D model. It is a very broad scope. It's not in a case study, we go in a very focused manner. So it is convergent kind of a method. Appreciative inquiry is a divergent method, where different aspects are also looked into. It involves in a central way the art and practice of asking questions that strengthen a system's capacity to apprehend, anticipate, and heighten positive potential. The keyword over here, so I would like to read the second sentence once again. Okay, it says, in its broadest focus, it involves a systematic discovery of what gives life to a living system. So, what is that core fuel? What is that main core positive thing, aspect, okay, which gives life to a living system? When it is most alive, most effective, and most constructively capable in terms of economic, ecological, and human terms. It also involves, in a central way, the art and practice of asking questions that strengthen a system's capacity to apprehend, anticipate, and heighten positive potential. So the whole study, it's an approach. The whole study is about finding out what is that core, uh, like a heart, what is that core because of which, the other things operate effectively, and then there is a complete overall impact. And having done this, if we go to the figure which is there, we'll be able to understand it better. The appreciative inquiry has a 4D model. First is discovery. What gives life? The best of what is, which is what gives life. So appreciating. The second D is dream. What could be? Envisioning the possible, which is innovative. Third is design. What should be? Now there is could be. The second D was what could be. The third D is what should be. Building the ideal, which is co-constructing. Fourth is deploying what will be. Could be, should be, will be. Executing with excellence, which is sustaining. So at the center, you see there is a positive core. This positive core is impacting these four different Ds. And with respect to discovery, there is a strategic focus because we are more interested in, through this model, we are more interested in identifying what gives life, okay, to a living system when it is most alive, most effective, and most constructively capable in economic and all other senses. So I'm sure many of us find it all this very philosophical or very complicated and things like that, and that's the reason it is not used in corporate in a regular training. But these are all very broad models, which doesn't immediately give us. So a typical Kirkpatrick evaluation form, you give it to 20 people, and nowadays everything is digital. So they give a QR code, you scan it, you put in your participants put in their answer, and even before participant reach home or within half an hour or so, you have all the data, the analysis, the form, the outcome, you already know how the program is. So those are not useless, they are quick methods, and they have the specific use of immediately finding out the impact of the program to be able to make whatever decisions related to similar programs which may happen in your future. But the methods that we are using today are the ones which are more related to the research, more related not to just one training program, but the training initiative as a whole, the impact on the organization, system, ecology, social responsibility, and so many things which are there. The basic principles of appreciative inquiry are: appreciation is what the inquiry begins with. So find out the best rather than finding out the mistakes. Find out what is good, capitalize on it, work on it, and from there you really come to know what is really the heart of it. So what gives life? Appreciative inquiry should be applicable to the system in which the inquiry is taking place and is tested out in practice. The inquiry has to be provocative by nature and should be able to create new knowledge compelling to the system members. So appreciative, keep on finding out what is best, how is it helping, like that. It is collaborative in the sense that the system members must be part of the design and execution of the inquiry. So this is what this model is based on, and now we come to the last model, which is on page number 61, value chain model. The name itself helps us to understand that this model is very much based on the value chain, the procurement, the logistics, the outbound logistics, the marketing, the sales, okay, the margins which the organization gets, the infrastructure, the human resource management, technology, procurement, the support activities, the primary activities. The model itself describes that how the training is impacting the complete value chain, or if we take value chain as a basis, how this training correlates to that. Value chain analysis is a tool that is useful in working out how you can create the greatest possible value for your customers. It is based, that's why all this is included, and it is based on the concept that ultimately everything that we do in the organization is primarily for the base of customer. I mean, the value chain model is, I guess, probably about 15 to maybe 30 years old or whatever. But today you will have organizations in their value statements and all, or competency model, where they say customer focus. So everything at the end of it has to impact the customer, because it is the customers which will decide the longevity or the sustainability of the organization. So that's why the value chain as a model is used. One may use inputs of time, knowledge, equipment, system to create service of actual value to the person being served, which is the customer. As you can see over here, it looks at various dimensions. Value chain analysis helps in identifying the various ways in which one can create value for the customers, and then help think through how one can maximize this value. It could be through super products, super service, or jobs well done, etc. etc. So value chain analysis, if you see over here, there are these colors. So it has got the three-step process. Okay. Activity analysis. First is step one is to identify the activities that can be undertaken to deliver the product or service. So this is like, 7 habits of highly successful people. One of the habits is work backwards. Keep the goal in mind and then keep on working backwards to how we can improve or whatever. It is the similar thing which is used over here. Step one is to identify the activities that can be undertaken to deliver the product or the service. So that is the basic route. Now the second part is step two is for each activity that is identified, think through what can be done to add greatest value to the customer. So excellence in each of these activities, and that's how you will see in organizations we'll have Center for Excellence. Okay, so many of these, initiatives in HR and others emerge from concepts like this, merging of these concepts. I'm giving these kind of examples for us to really to be able to correlate and understand that these are not really just simple theoretical models. You mug it up and then a question will come and then you score 10 marks. But these are, when you look at it in a broader sense, when you look at the perspective, or when you look at it as to why somebody would have constructed a model like this and where it is applicable, then yes, you will identify the areas in which it can be applicable. And when the purpose or the objective of the organization to train people is related to that, then we work backwards and we identify that okay, if this is the kind of a goal that we are looking at, then which of these 15 different models of evaluation that we used would be correct for that? Like I stated in the previous lecture, that let's not get into this whole last 2-3 sessions that we have been in, is based on the premise that let's not get into one size fits all kind of an evaluation system. You may have 60, 70, 80% of the evaluation because there are certain basic data which is required, which may be standardized. But for each of the program, because the training objective is different, you should look into various ways in which one can evaluate and deviate. In the process, it actually helps us to become more focused, research oriented training professional and be able to actually add value to the organization. So coming back to step number 2, value analysis. Step 2, for each activity that is identified, think through what can be done to add the greatest value to the customer. So if I go back, there are so many different activities: infrastructure, HR, technology, procurement, inbound, operations, outbound, marketing, sales, service, margins, etc. Maybe sometimes we say, okay, we don't, maybe let's reduce the margin for some time and see how it helps the customer. So look at each of these and identify that what can be done to add the greatest value to the customer. Evaluation and planning. Step 3, here we evaluate whether the value added is worth making the change and then plan for course of action to implement the same. This model I will directly correlate with certain standard thinking that people have. That is, okay, people are not performing, employees are not performing as expected. They don't know how to perform. So let's have a 2-day training program and then they will start performing. So like I said, let us also as training professionals learn to say that, look here, we are not magicians that you give us somebody and we'll do like this, Harry Potter, and in 2 days' time, you know, you will get a completely converted person. It doesn't happen like that. In 2 days' time, we can only make them aware of things. We can only help them practice the new skills to a certain extent. But at the end of it, if their immediate superior, the organization, the system does not support, follow up, or the culture is not created, the results will not be there. So coming back to again step number 3, this I'm correlating over there. Here you evaluate whether the value added is worth making the change, okay, and then plan for course of action to implement the same. Many a times it may not be worth making that kind of a change, and then it could become waste of money. Okay, so friends, we have come to the end of my portion in the syllabus. And from next session onward, there will be another faculty who will start from module number 5 and take you through the syllabus. It's been wonderful being with you all. I'm sure you all enjoyed. We still have some time, so I'm open to any question, answers, anything which anybody would like to discuss. Does anybody have any questions?
No, sir. I think from my end, there is no question. Thank you.
Okay. What about others?
No questions.
Okay, fine. I hope you all enjoyed the sessions we had. Some of you have been attending all of them. Some of you are attending once in a while. So keep in touch. You all have my email ID. So anything, anytime if you require, I'll always be available. It will be my pleasure.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye, sir.